Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of whatever this is. We did call it moving into the discomfort, but we try to redefine what this is and what the space is. I'm gonna go ahead and ask everyone just to introduce themselves and tell us what you do.
My name is Usli, and I am in the community development space.
Cool, and I'm Ambu, and I'm in real estate at the moment.
I'm Michael, and I'm a filmmaker.
Ooh,
Nice.
such a word. Oh.
I'm Sia and
Okay. Wow.
I'm Sia and I'm unemployed.
It's one of my favorite positions.
Yeah.
Fun employed.
Fun employed. So we're gonna have three big questions for tonight, and hopefully they'll spark some discussion. So the first question for us tonight is define black pain in South Africa. We hear people talking about black pain. What is black pain in South Africa?
My understanding of black pain is the silencing of black people. I think it's this monoculture, if there's even a word like that, where black people have to adhere to one specific thing, and it's the whiteness space, and it has nothing to do with who we are. And so black pain is, for me, if I were to put it metaphorically, it would be trying to speak and not being heard. So you having to sound a particular way, you having to be a particular way, and losing every essence of who you are. Black pain is actually telling someone that this is what I'm feeling, and someone completely disregarding you. So that's black pain, and I mean there are different levels to this, but the true essence of that is we've now come to realize that we've lost a whole bunch of our culture, we've lost a whole lot of our essence, true essence, that is Ubuntu and blackness, due to a system that is one monoculture, and that is whiteness. And so black pain is us actually calling that out and still being silenced. I don't know if that makes sense.
I don't know. Black pain for me is like my everyday existence.
Experience.
It's an everyday thing that I experience. When I go to white areas, I don't feel like I belong.
Yeah.
But then when I go back to a black community that I live in, I don't feel like I belong. I feel like I'm too white for that community. And then when I go to white spaces, I'm not white enough. You know, so it's just like everyday experience of just feeling like I don't belong.
Yeah.
That's what black pain is for me.
Well, I mean, in general terms, if you look at black pain, you'd say even poverty. Like if I lose my job and I lose everything that I have, like all my shit, I'm going to the township. I'm relegated to township status, to a shack or whatever. That's poverty for me. In reality speaking, like that's it for me. And then another person of a different skin color, poverty for them might be something completely different to them. I mean, the white people I hang out with, when they say I'm broke, it means I'm broke, but I'll be going to France next month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe for them, they go, I just don't have money to spend right now for things. I have money to spend for beers or all of that. I've got money that I've saved. But for black people, like generally speaking, and you look at their condition of living, their way of doing things, their educatedness or lack of, you know, it's like, no, when we talk about lack, we talk about poverty. And we talk about, you're looking at things like education, you're looking at things like healthcare, you're looking at, I don't know, man, the state of living that the people find themselves in, how a black person can be comfortable living in the rural of the most rural, and still live off the land and still survive and see that as a norm. How a black person can fight to live in a squatter camp somewhere and still survive that and live like it's normal. When a white person, if you say to them, you know, I'm just generalizing, like if you say to them, go live in the squatter camp, it's like, no, man, most of our white South Africans will never set foot in the township.
Yeah.
Because they still ask questions that are stupid, like, is it safe for me to do that? Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to wear this? Am I allowed to bring my phone? Am I allowed to bring my purse? Can I eat that stuff?
Can I go for a run?
Can I, you know?
And it's also, I think for me, black pain is how I am judged solely based on my skin color. So I always make an example of this, that how it must feel for a black man when you know that you're not a thief, but you're walking down the street and somebody in a car, let's say it's a white person, let's say it's an Indian person, let's say it's a whatever. Indian people are black. Okay. Anyway, that's another conversation. But for somebody to lock their doors, for somebody to hold their bag tightly because you're coming and it's your skin color. The same person is the same age as that person walking or crossing the road, they would never feel that way. So it's all the things that are associated with my skin color. That has nothing to do with my character. That has nothing to do with who I am as a person. But it's somebody deciding based on, again, the people that think that they are superior to blackness, who have shaped and who have represented people of my color as people you should be afraid of, as people that you shouldn't trust. And it's also, when you look at Black Pain, it's a life of a typical South African person who grew up in the township, doesn't have opportunities to study, whose mom is a domestic worker, who can't afford to get them to any school that will give them any opportunities that any other child of a different color would have. So Black Pain for me is the lack of opportunities that Black people have. Black Pain for me is having to act a particular way because there are stereotypes associated with the skin color, with my skin color. So when I go into different spaces, don't be too loud. Oh, it's those rowdy Black people. Oh, it's... So Black Pain for me, it's just never being represented for who we are. It's people who have created a false narrative about my people, and that is something that society feeds off, and that is something that society has made to be, I don't know how I can word it, but
packaged it and
right? And it's also translated into our education, where education is about whiteness. Education is representing a specific group of people. It doesn't speak to anything that is about blackness, and so that is what Black Pain is.
Black pain, I think, could be looked at in a way that it's a kind of holistic trauma, that the kind of, because trauma is experienced by human beings on various levels, but Black Pain takes trauma to a holistic level where it's both psychological, economic, physical, emotional, and it's the kind of trauma that white people cannot experience because the history that caused this particular trauma was perpetuated by them. So I would just add that alongside the various things that have been said is that you have a particular kind of trauma that I think in the last 20 to 30 years has really been looked at academically, and then now actually but I mean it's been in evidence for the past 500, 600 years in this space at least, that it's a kind of trauma that I think has not the sense of the entire human being under trauma has not yet been looked at to the extent, and I think that's what sets Black Pain apart from all human beings go through hard times and we get through. The difference is that Black Pain it encompasses almost every facet of human existence, to the point where just being in a coffee shop, in a taxi, in a conversation, even language itself embodies this sense of where do I belong, and I think that's where I think white people maybe can understand. We can try and engage with this by saying that like we will never experience this because it's on another level of trauma. It's beyond our engagement, and I think that's the level of pain that we're talking about.
Here's the thing, like pay attention to the Black people that are around you in your life. Your modern day prophet Trevor Noah saying, every Black person is a white friend, every white friend is a black friend, and there's truth in that. Like just pay attention to what people are coming from and how we got to where we are. It doesn't make sense to me that somebody from Sweden knows the township better than somebody who lives in Westville. Like, come on, man. Like, they come there and they dance with the people, they do things, and they get in the planes and they go. And you are still asking stupid questions. Like, get in there, it's on your doorstep, ask your maid, engage with them. Like, how did you get there? That you are 45 and I'm 39, I've got 2 kids, and I'm paying you 150 just to work for me for this week. Like, how did you get there? Like, that's what interests me. Even the people at the robots, what interests me about them is how did you get here, my man? To a point where life has hit you so bad that you're begging for my 2 rand at the robots or whatever coin I have. And we've lost it, the sacredness of a human life. We've lost that. We've dichotomized it to Black people live like that, white people live like that. Everybody goes through their own shit, so we're okay. But it's not okay. Some people's shit is systematic, and we need to address it and not be scared of it. Come to the table and address it, because otherwise, how are you gonna get to a point where you can joke with Black people about blackness?
Oh yeah.
When you're not part of the conversations.
Okay, so our next question for us is define white privilege.
Let me attempt this one. Okay, so I think what's important to when talking about white privilege is understanding the intricate and complex nature that it exists in that it encompasses both the systemic and the personal, and I think that's an important one to consider because it encompasses both of those things, and it's rooted in the historical. So history is where it stems from, and because of that, the two, if you can picture a tree, there's the two branches are going off into the personal side and the systemic side, and that's a really important thing to understand, is because history accumulated produces effects, and those effects encompass economy, culture, language, education, knowledge creation, etc., etc. And when we talk about white privilege, we talk about a history that has been dominated by a European colonial context, which is Caucasian and white, which has dominated Africa, for example, across the globe, the colonial kind of expansion across the globe, but particularly in South Africa, it dominated all of those areas of life to the point where today, both in the systemic sense that a white person can be born and have greater advantage because they can speak English, or simply just because they won't get followed in the spa, or simply because they will be trusted more by an employee. There are those systemic advantages that one is usually not aware of, and there are actual personal advantages and kind of privileges and benefits that one also sees and it can be aware of in everyday life. So it's important to understand the systemic and the personal nature. And just lastly, as a metaphor, if anyone just got really confused by what I said, imagine a race. You've got a line of people from various races, and we're all going to compete in the same race. And history, as the referee, comes and says to me, we're going to bring you ahead. You're going to start the race here. Sia, you're going to start the race here, as history determines that you're born in KwaMashu or in a place where you're going to have to fight greater battles than I would. And then the whistle goes and we start the same race of life, but you're going to start it down there with no shoes on, with less training and whatever the case is, and I'm going to start here with a whole lot more advantage to get across the finish line before you. And I think that's a good metaphor for how personal and systemic privilege benefits white people above all others.
I think with the whole definition of white privilege, we have to also, I read something about defining what it's not. And what white privilege isn't, it's not saying that white people are exempt from experiencing hardships. I think with white privilege, what people need to understand, because a lot of the time when you go white privilege, people then disengage. And only because they're being offended because my dad worked hard, bro.
Yeah, I studied and I'm a doctor.
I'm a doctor, so I've worked hard. I don't understand why, all those things. And I hear it because, yes, people work hard, but you need to understand the systemic, which Mike obviously has explained, things that went on before that. And the reason why whiteness and white privilege exist is because of the advantages that white people have. And it's not saying that you guys are not going through hardships, that there aren't any white people that are poor and living in slums or whatever it is that you want to call it. But you've never had to experience oppression, right?
Yeah.
Due to your skin color. So even if you were to take
the kind of trauma that
black people have gone through. So even if you were to take Sebastian from wherever the slums are, I actually don't know them, and you take a Sibusiso from KwaMashu and you put them together, they could agree that we're both poor and we both, whatever it is that you want to now box as white people experience this as well. The opportunities that those two will get, he will be favored over me. Why? Because Sibusiso doesn't get an opportunity because of his skin color, because of where he lives. Whereas because of you being solely white, it gives you the privilege and the preference, because everything that's the connotation with whiteness, trustworthy, civil, not barbarian. I'm not saying you guys say that, but if you do
Okay.
but anyway, that's just like simplifying what that is. It's not saying that you guys don't go through, and by you guys I mean white people, you don't go through hard stuff like black people do. We do, but it's not the same.
Yeah. And can I just add one other thing why should white people care? Why should we care about privilege? Just to say that is why no one's gonna diagnose for you, this is what you should do about your privilege. The thing is, go and consider what 400 years of colonialism does to a specific group of people for the benefit of their own lives, and figure out what that looks like for your own life.
Colonize a human being for that long and see what happens to them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's just the result of conditioning. Yes, there are people who, you said it, I'm not going to repeat what you said, there are white people who go through shit too. Get that. I'm just saying that conditions are just different. The conditioning of it is just different. The playfield was not equal, and that is why you are where you are. If I go and apply for a loan, it's going to be more difficult than it is for a white guy.
You know why I think, for me, it's important to simplify this. A lot of intellectual conversations have gone on around this. So this is not new. This space that we're creating is not new. What has been tiring is we've really gotten to a place where you uses big words to explain simple things. South Africans need to learn how to navigate this practically in their lives. So when I was saying let's define what it's not, I'm trying to explain that don't make this, oh my God, that means that you're saying that I'm racist. You know what I mean? Because that's the immediate thing, and it's an excuse because you don't want to confront the reality of your privilege. So what we have to sort of try and navigate is, how do we simplify this so that whoever's watching this is saying, okay, cool, this is a practical way in which I can look at my privilege, and this is a way that I can understand it, because we need white South Africans to start getting it.
Yeah,
We've had this conversation too many times for you guys to not get it. We need you guys to get it, so now we're gonna dumb it down so that it makes sense. What is privilege and what it isn't. We're not talking about the fact that you work. We all know that you worked hard or whatever it is that you want to make excuses for. It's done now. Let's look at the systemic things that happened prior to that so that you can understand.
Yeah.
And go to research as well.
I differ from your opinion on that. I feel like I don't have to define white privilege for people. I've done the work myself to understand my blackness.
It's good.
And if white people are actually serious about South Africa and what it is that we're a part of, I think you've got to do the hard work. Like, if you really are serious about the current context in this country, and we're talking about elections coming up and where we're going as a country, you've got to do the work. Like, that can't be on my shoulders. Like, I've got enough shit going on that I need to carry of my own. And I feel like if you want to engage, sure, I can be around there, but it's not my job to define what white privilege is for white people, because I've had to figure out my own blackness.
It's annoying that we black people, the oppressed, are the ones creating safe spaces and are the ones trying to get white people to talk about this. And even when we try and do that, white people are like, you guys are so angry or whatever. Sure. And it's frustrating because, again, it's privilege. It's fucking privilege. Because what privilege does is I can step in and out whenever I want, and I still keep my wealth and I still keep whatever I have. Whereas for me, it costs me every single thing, like my emotional well-being, to try and get to get it.
Okay, guys. So the last question for the night is, where do you see South Africa in the next 25 years? I've been wrestling a lot with this one, because this is about narrative. It's about changing the narrative. What are we thinking about as we think of future South Africa?
Well, I'm an anarchist by heart. So I if we're talking about the system, I don't think there'll be any change in the next 25 years, because our constitution is deeply embedded. Our political factions and infighting and power hold of the African National Congress is so deeply embedded within our society that and our most extreme leftist spaces are captured and pseudo leftists. They're not real about it. So my opinion is that conversations like these are super important to the middle class. and the emerging kind of intellectual within that space. However, I think that if because we often think of the apocalypse, in a civil war, but I think that's been happening for the last 20 years. It's just that we haven't been evident to the fact that tires have been fucking burnt, on a weekly basis in roads, as we were talking about
earlier.
The protest action that happens on a continuous basis because of service delivery and lack of water and electricity. I mean, those are signs of the masses revolting. It's just that their voices are so silenced by our idea of our globalized social media perspective on what change looks like. So I think that on a large scale, South Africa will not look any different to what it is now in the systemic sense. But I think that spaces like Fees Must Fall and Roads Must Fall, and particularly Roads Must Fall, if they can avoid the political polemics and polarities and remain a space of people's voices, angry voices that will say the shit they feel, and do the shit they feel, and creatively express that, and not completely polarize themselves into political rhetoric, leadership, comrades, etc. That stuff is bullshit. That's what Fees Must Fall ended up kind of becoming because of the hijacking of political spaces. If those kind of creative spaces can be created, I think we can see grassroots revolt that can change systems on a grassroots level, and I think that'll be incredibly important. But I just say that I don't think anything will look different because I think it's sobering. It's a nice fancy to think that there'll be civil war and everything will change and the land will come.
Is that fancy?
I think it's big fancy because I've spent enough time in political spaces to know that the people that say bringing back the land are not the people living without bread on their tables.
Exactly.
It's people that fucking will never put their bodies on the line and pick up a gun. They've never even picked up a gun in their lives.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they would never fight in the streets anyway.
So
And I'm saying that to fucking provoke those assholes that I'm friends with. that
Tell the
pseudo revolutionists.
The pseudo-revolutionists.
I agree.
Revolutionary Mike.
I think we have to separate ourselves from the system, and political spaces are the system, driven by people who have their own personal agendas for creating those spaces, and then using our voices to try and manipulate the situation. So I really think that spaces like this, where we can actually share our thoughts and shape sort of the country that we want, that is exactly what we need to do. We need to create safe spaces, more safe spaces, to not have it all figured out. So I've been swearing a lot. I actually ran out of words. For the bullshit to actually happen within the same space that we have. So we have to be the mess that we are so that we can recreate what we want South Africa to look like. And so I think how I see South Africa in the next 25 years is, if you're part of the change, you got to be a part of it. And if you're not, you're going to be fucked up.
I think differently from you guys. I think the next 25 years, the people are going to wake up. One of the things that makes me say is spaces like these, and I see them across the country, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and more people your ages are starting to say stuff. They're just starting to stand up and say shit because they're uncomfortable with the way things are. And 25 years from now, where would the political leaders of this age now be? 25 years from now? Well, and politics are proving to us, America is showing us, that politicians are becoming more and more irrelevant.
When I heard you say, like, the people will revolt or whatever,
people will wake up, man.
Will wake
the
up.
leaders will find themselves.
I actually think, you know what, I don't think that's possible. The one government is backing on the hunger of the people and poverty. And that's what they ride on. And that's what they will continue to ride on. I'm hungry right now. If you come and you are the ruling party and you're giving me food today, and that's the reality in South Africa. You're dealing with people who are hungry right now. And if you can come to me and give me hope for food and money, I'm gonna vote for you.
Activism with no action doesn't mean anything in my world, and hence why we're doing this. I think Yeah.
That's why these conversations are important.
Yeah. As I've wrestled with this and what do I
For
actually...
us bourgeois,
bro, I live in Kamashi.
We're talking about it over wine.
I know.
I know. We need to disrupt this. We need to disrupt this.
Yeah.
We can't have conversations at the bougie places. We need to disrupt this.
Is this bougie?
Well, lower class bougie. But anyway.
Wow.
Anyways.
Apologies.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode, and thank you to our awesome guests. Looking forward to many more of these conversations. I think every time we have these conversations, I feel like we just scrape like the surface. And we're just getting started, but because of time, we have to give it up for. So until next time,
Bye.
peace everyone.
See you next week.
Good time.